I'm sorry about my English, but I will try to read my text. Peace and holy peace. Considerations on the theme of the modern project of peace and its limits. 1. Kant, Hegel, and Politics. Published in Königsberg in 1793, Kant's essay, Religion Within the Limits of Reason Alone, started with meaningful words. Quote, "The world lieth in the evil." Characteristically, the sage from Königsberg starts his text not with his own thought, but with a cryptic quotation, which is a passage from the first epistle of St. John. "The whole world lieth in wickedness." The world proceeds towards evil, Kant writes. At the same time, as a typical man of enlightenment, as Aufklärung, he tries to change this world. However, he takes into account the power of evil, and to tame it he turns typically for thinker of that epoch to the religion within the limits of reason, deprived of ritual and reduced to morality. Because after the sin, man is incorrigible and, quote, "from such crooked wood as man is made of, nothing perfectly straight can be built," unquote. History of mankind is from its beginning not a history of peace, but a history of war, interrupted occasionally by relative armistice. War is a permanent state of humanity, a law of nature. Peace is something unnatural, artificial, introduced by the power of man-made law. That is why, if someone dreams of peace, as Plato said, he should prepare for war. Agony, struggle, is a natural state for a man. And this truth was well expressed by Thomas Hobbes' phrase, "the war of hell against all, bellum omnium contra omnes." It is a state which makes even God powerless, as Mike Lila says. If antiquity respected gods and the Middle Ages obeyed God, in the times of modernity it is no longer God the good, or God as the guarantee of political order, or God of nature. That is the sovereign, but it is a new God of this world, the coldest of the master, as Nietzsche said, state. Kant cherished no illusion as to the essence of religion, but also as to essence of politics. In his essay for Perpetual Peace, he wrote, quote, "The state of peace among men living side by side is not the natural state, status naturalis. The natural state is one of war. This does not mean the open hostilities, but at least an unceasing threat of war. The state of peace, therefore, must be established, for in order to be secured against hostility. It is not sufficient that hostility simply be not committed, and unless the security is pledged to each by his neighbor, a thing that can occur only in a civil state. Each may treat his neighbor from whom he demands this security as an enemy," unquote. Although the dream of modernity is peace founded on the forged emancipation of man's and mankind's reason, its postmodern balance, that is modernity minus its delusion, as Bauman said, turned out to be far below the expectation of the philosophers, the legislators. If Kant spoke about the establishing for perpetual peace, Richard Rorty spoke only of the establishing of democracy. With peace, its derivative. In a postmodern world, no one occupies a position of privilege. There is no there are no gurus. Politics is for all, and all is politics. In the global world, the terrestrial Leviathan has become a kind of lie religion, substituting not only for the old religions, rites, and symbols, but even for God himself. And if we say that he, modern last man, as Nietzsche said, is so poor that he has no religion, Chantal Millon del Sol, we have to add that religion has been successfully replaced by politics, becoming the only of the modern man politics as the substitute of religion, the Ersatzgott, becomes the space without which is impossible to understand oneself and the world. It is politics that, by becoming the only world-immanent deity and ruler of heaven and earth, takes on the role of sacred rites and books. According to Hegel, in modern Europe, it was Napoleon was not only the first to understand it, but also the one who implanted this idea, but overthrowing European monarchy, restoring the empire, establishing new legal and civil codices. It is him that brings about the end of history. History with capital H has ended, in fact. Since the Battle of Jena, the conflict between the law, Herrschaft, and the slave, Knechtschaft, as a propeller of history, has been exhausted. In the reconciliatory synthesis, the civil state, German Bürgerschaft, the fight for acknowledgement, Anerkennung, has lost its sense. There has come the ultimate mutual acceptance of both self-knowledges, that is, of the Lord and of the slave. In the civil reconciliation, all has become equal. History has drawn to its end. We live in the post-historic era. After a long period of time, you have come to Sunday of the earth. Since Napoleon conquered Germany and his Cossacks, history has exhausted its possibilities. As Alexander Kojève writes, the struggle between Lord and the slave propelled history. However, since God died and class privileges and limitations ceased to exist, the struggle has lost its purpose. Revolution and enlightenment has made sacred dimension of power redundant. The people has become sovereign. Commenting upon Kojève's interpretations of Hegel, Lyra writes that revolution strengthened the idea of mutual acceptance of human mind and erased the difference between the Lord and the slave. Humanity reached the ultimate border of equality, satisfied consumption, homogenic state, and global economy. Even the cultural revolution in China is, according to Kojève, the Chinese version of Napoleon's Codex. Contrary to overall radical historicists, Hegel believed that the process of history is not never-ending, that history has its end. We have been born in the senile age of mankind. When history has ended, there is nothing for us to do. What remains is only to implant universal democratic civic society, which is a goal of universal history, according to Hegel and Fukuyama. But it is the question. Because universal history is not the same as the history of universe. History has drawn to its end. We live in the post-historic era. After a long period of time, you have come to Sunday of the earth. Since Napoleon conquered Germany and his Cossacks, history has exhausted its possibilities. As Alexander Kojève writes, the struggle between Lord and the slave propelled history. However, since God died and class privileges and limitations ceased to exist, the struggle has lost its purpose. Revolution and enlightenment has made sacred dimension of power redundant. The people has become sovereign. Commenting upon Kojève's interpretations of Hegel, Lyra writes that revolution strengthened the idea of mutual acceptance of human mind and erased the difference between the Lord and the slave. Humanity reached the ultimate border of equality, satisfied consumption, homogenic state, and global economy. Even the cultural revolution in China is, according to Kozev, the Chinese version of Napoleon's Codex. Contrary to overall radical historicists, Hegel believed that the process of history is not never-ending, that history has its end. We have been born in the senile age of mankind. When history has ended, there is nothing for us to do. What remains is only to implant universal democratic civic society, which is a goal of universal history, according to Hegel and Fukuyama. But it is the question. Because universal history is not the same as the history of universe. History is the work of man. It is only man that constitutes in content, in Hegel meanings. According to Hegel, politics is not a section of human activity. Politics is fate and vocation of man, too. Enlightenment, pietas of reason and peace. Starting this essay on radical evil with the paraphrase of the well-known passage from the first letter of St. John, the world lied in evil, Kant expressed the real, that is, post-lapsarian state of man. If you had ended with the conclusion that man is contaminated by evil and there is nothing good to be done, we would have been a preacher. However, he is a man of the Enlightenment. He is not only an interpreter, but also legislator. He believes in the power of reason and approaches the issue as a philosopher of his epoch, that is revolutionary, without of alien guide. Very characteristic quotation from Was ist Aufklärung? Kant's Was ist Aufklärung? Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-imposed immaturity. Immaturity is an ability to use one's understanding without guidance from another. This immaturity is self-imposed when its cause lies not in lack of understanding, but in lack of resolve and courage to use it without guidance from another. Sapere aude, dare to know. Have courage to use your own understanding. This is the motto of enlightenment. Referring to Jean Lyotard, this project as a typical one for the type of big narration, where, quote, the hero of knowledge toiled in the name of ethical or political zeal, that is, in the name of peace, unquote, we can... I continue. Kant's rhetoric in the idea for universal history from a cosmopolitan point of view contains message, which seems alien for us postmodern men, stained by the memory of French Revolution and Soviet one and Auschwitz and Kolyma, as Joseph Tischner said. Kant's very phrase, finally, after devastations, revolutions, it's a very enigmatic phrase, it evokes our uneasiness. Totalitarian experiences of the last century and the fate of European philosophy, marked by totalism, for example, by Levinas, increase our certainty that the seeds of pathology were in the very European thought, marked by totalizing elements and carrying totalitarian potency. The example of which are thought of Kant, Fichte, and Hegel. Nevertheless, what differed Kant from the totalists and such supporters of closer society in Karl Popper's understanding as Fichte and Hegel was the feeling of evil, as said Marian Jechowski. He was not a typical thinker of enlightenment. In contrast to Lumierists, he was open to so-called mysterium iniquitatis. which is shown in his meditation on two principles in human nature. Beforehand, he was a promoter of maturity, of reason-free, of alien guide. Now, he stops before unfathomable mystery. As a typical rationalist, Kant gives a rational answer, though the basis of it is his rationality insufficiently rational, subject to suspicion, since it was accepted by Goethe. According to him, man does not need other justification than his reason. That is why about radical evil, the innate one, we can speak only in reference to man as a moral being. Even consists in putting a moral formula in place of universal law. The roots of evil, named radical evil, disappear in darkness which cannot be penetrated by natural light, and Kant does not attempt to do it. Though, quite vividly, he lets us that in face of this evil, the Enlightenment myth of liberating and self-liberating reason forth. From the point of my view, of my topic, it means that mysterium iniquitatis does not allow for stable construction of peace. Finishes, Husserl believed that the greatest danger of Europe is fatigue. We are tired of talking about peace. Europe is tired. Perhaps it is tired of dullness and bored. Everlasting prelude to peace, a kind of hollow way to peace, is an ability to take up a decision, caused by fear or lack of faith. It is an ability to take up new great narrative, in the term Lyotard. To have a courage of utopia, new utopia. We need utopia. Therefore, we remain in a gray, dark corridor that is in the hallway to hell. And we don't know which is the direction to hell and which to paradise. It is a special threat and challenge for us Christians, as such that is never caught not to be, as Revelation said, Apocalypse, as lukewarm. We are good for nothing only, perhaps, for being downtrodden by the world, for each man. Until the end of his days, there is only one holy peace, as Cyprian Norwin spoke, the peace of struggle. Thank you.